Hello friends, this video explains about the exception filter, also how to use the custom exception filter and built-in exception filter in MVC application. What is exception filter? Exception filters are run only if an unhandled exception has been thrown when invoking an action method. The exception can come from the following locations. Another kind of filters like authorization, action or result filter, the action method itself, and when the action result is executed. Exception filters implement the iException filter interface. Here we can see the details of the iException filter interface. In the iException filter, there is one method is onException we will use to implement when we are creating a custom exception filter. Why we required exception filter? Mostly we use try catch in our application to handle the error, but we cannot reuse the exception handling logic across multiple actions or methods. Now we can say that we will use override exception for share error handling logic across all the action in a controller. But in this approach, we cannot reuse the exception handling across multiple controllers. For overcome this type of limitation, we use exception filter in MVC application. With the help of exception filter, we can handle the exception at the global level, controller level and action level. Let's start how to create a custom exception filter in MVC application. For example, in the MVC application, I want to handle the out of range exception in the application. We have created a new class file called rangeExceptionAttribute.cs in custom attribute folder. Here we have derived the rangeExceptionAttribute class from the filter attribute class in addition to implement the iException interface. For using the filter attribute and iException filter interface, we need to use system.web.mvc namespace in our MVC application. This exception filter handling arguments out of range exception instance by redirection the user browser to a file called rangeerrorpage.html in the content folder. In this method, we have checked exception is not proper handled and exception type is argument out of range exception. Then this page will be redirected to a custom error page which we have created in rangeerrorpage.html in content folder. Now, how to apply the exception filter in our MVC application. First, we need to create a rangeerrorpage.html file within the content folder in our application. We will use this file to display as a simple message. Next, we need to add an action method to the home controller which will throw the exception we are interested in. Next, we need to add an action method to the home controller which will throw the exception we are interested. Here the home controller. In the home controller, I have write down the method is a range test. This range test is throw an argument out of range exception. Now I build the application. We can see the default exception handling if you start the application and navigate the /home/range-test/50 URL. Here you can see it is showing the proper error message what he is getting in the application. But this is not good to show the end user of this type of yellow pages and this type of error message. Now for handling this, we can apply the exception filter controller or individual action. For using the range exception filter, we need to add MVC filter.custom attribute namespace on the page. Here we have saved the page and build the application. We can see the effect if build the application and again navigate to the /home/range test/15 URL again. It is redirect to range error HTML page after handle the error. Now we will see that how to use built-in exception filter. Microsoft has included the handle error attribute in the MVC framework, which is built-in implementation of the iException filter interface. With it, we can specify an exception and the names of views and layout using the properties. We have described properties below like exception type, view, and master. Now let's see the example of built-in exception filter. The handle error attributes filter works only when custom error are enabled in the web.config file. Now open the web.config file, and in the system.web I have added the custom error mode on and set the default redirect value on content folder range error page.html. I have saved these changes. Now we will see how to apply the built-in exception filter with our controller action method. Here you can see I have applied the exception filter handle error over the range test action method. In the handle error attribute we have provide a following parameters like exception type is the argument out of range exception, and provide the view name. It will be redirect to the after getting the exception in the application. Now again build the application and trying to access again the same page /home/range test/50. It is again redirect to range error.html page. So in this video we have learned what is exception filter and how to use the custom exception filter and built-in exception filter in MVC application. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you.